Hello guys, I welcome you to today's tutorial. So this is going to be a complete tutorial on the course workshop technology. So basically in this video we're going to try and look at the main outlines of this course, how you can go about it, and what is required of you to know as you are learning this particular course. And at the same time, we'll try and have a quick review of what chapter 1 is all about. So without wasting much of the time, let's just get right into it. So when you look at this course, workshop technology, you have to keep in mind that it mainly has two parts. So there's what is known as the first part 1, and this is mechanical workshop technology, which is basically what the first part is all about. So under the first part, in most cases, you are required to know the following topics. So starting off at number 1, it's very important that you know what workshop safety is under the mechanical workshop technology. Then the second topic will most likely be material properties. Yeah. So and then the third topic in most cases will have to be machining. And keep in mind that machining is mostly referred to as a secondary workshop process. The main idea to this becomes clearer as you understand what machining is all about. And then lastly, get to look at casting. And in mainstream books, you will notice that casting is referred to as a primary workshop process. Yeah, so additionally, for curiosity's sake, you might as well be required to look at welding. Yeah, but in most cases, it's the first 4 topics. So aside from that, this same course also has another part. Let's just call it part 2. So the second part mainly is about electrical workshop technology. Yeah, so basically for this one, you tend to look at most of these things, but you just look at them at the electrical engineering view. So you look at safety with regards to electricity and electrical engineering. You look at some materials, yeah, and so on. But this one, the second part, is normally very short, and you can even finish it within a day. But where there's a lot of work is in the first part 1. So let's begin our series. Just say part 1. So as of today, our main interest is looking at what workshop safety is. Workshop safety. So how I would describe workshop safety is by saying safety is a state of being free from harm or danger. And in general, not just workshop safety, but safety in general itself can be described in this way. So after you describe what safety is, there's need for us to look at what this means. Call it assessing the situation. So in most cases, what you guys have to keep in mind is before you begin to do any task in an engineering workshop, particularly if it involves the use of tools or machinery, it is very important to stop and think, and then you consider these 4 points. So that's before you begin to do any task in a workshop. So consider, number 1, you need to know what are you going to do. That's a question you should ask yourself. And then secondly, you need to ask yourself, how are you going to do it? That's the second question. Then the third question you are going to ask yourself is, what tools and equipment do you need to do it? That's about the third question you're going to ask yourself. And then lastly, which is by far the most important question you should ask yourself, is what safety procedures have to be put in place to prevent accidents or even injury. So these are the basic 4 questions you should ask yourself. So maybe just a takeaway point for you guys is you have to take note of the fact that when you talk about safety in general, you need to know that workshop safety is an attitude of mind. And then maybe a main takeaway point for you guys is in as much as you are learning about chapter 1, yes, quite right, one of the most important things is to pass your exam and then move on to the next level. But then you have to keep in mind that some of the concepts which you learn from here and from elsewhere or from studying your books are things which you are supposed to apply to also safeguard yourself and ensure that you are safe, because you get to do a lot of labs, you get to be in the workshop, and you just have to keep in mind that workshop safety is an attitude of mind. Like, no one is supposed to tell you to dress in a certain way, but you just have to keep it in your mind. Yeah, so that was just a quick takeaway for you guys. So now let's look at the scope of the lesson, what we expect to look at under chapter 1. So let's say scope of the lesson. Yeah, so number 1, we expect to look at what safety clothing is. Then secondly, we look at workshop safety hazards. Then thirdly, we need to look at what safety data sheets and at the same time what labels are. Then lastly, we need to understand what storage and spills. So with that, then we've concluded chapter 1. So maybe, for instance, let's try to start by understanding what a typical workshop hazard is. So let's say typical workshop hazards like this. So you guys need to keep in mind that as you're working in a workshop, specifically a mechanical workshop, there are a number of accidents that could occur. And then our job is to try and look at some of those accidents which are most likely to occur in a mechanical workshop. So these are the ones we're going to list down here. So number 1, we can have fires and explosions. Then number 2, we can have chemical burns. Then number 3, we can have electric shocks. Then number 4, we can have physical injuries. Yeah, so basically these are some of the most common accidents which can occur in a mechanical workshop. So most of these are pretty much self-explanatory. So when you look at a fire, you know what a fire is. An explosion, you know what an explosion is. So you can even have chemical burns. So a typical in-depth workshop course might also look at what a scald is. So maybe you guys can just research about what a scald is and how it differs from a burn. Yeah, and then an electric shock, you know that this can occur when you have a certain amount of electricity flowing through your body, giving you a shock. And then you can also have I said shock, this was supposed to be physical injuries. You can also have physical injuries, whereby you cut yourself with a machine or a sharp instrument. So these are some of the accidents which can occur. But then again, one of the main talking points about these accidents is it's mainly important to just know that the type of actions you need to take and how to minimize accidents. Because what you guys need to keep in mind is you don't plan for accidents to happen, but then you can minimize the accidents occurring, and you can even prevent most of the accidents to occur. In as much as accidents are not planned for, but you can avoid them or minimize those accidents. Yeah, so that was just a main takeaway point from basic hazards. So now let's move on to now look at what are some of the basic personal protective clothing. So you find that for the sake of simplifying things, most professions will refer to this particular aspect as PPE. So I ask you to say, why are you not wearing the correct PPE? So it basically means personal protective equipment or clothing. So personal protective clothing helps minimize personal injury in the event of an accident. So without you wearing PPE, you find that the accident or the injury to you can be a bit worse than it could have been when you were wearing PPE. So this is how you would define PPE, they will ask you to try. So you need to say personal protective clothing helps minimize personal injury in the event of an accident. So now we need to look at some of the most basic and common PPEs, the ones which you are most likely to find. So some of the most common and basic PPEs will include things like number one, you can have an overall. So I'm sure most of you guys know how an overall looks like. Then if you're not very much aware, you can still look it up on Google. There's some nice pictures. Then secondly, you have protective boots, also known as safety boots. So these ones, even as you are going in the lab, you're going to be required to wear them. So you just have to know about them. Then maybe another example would be latex gloves. Yeah, so latex is a material. So that plastic like material, it's mainly used for making such kind of equipment, such as gloves, yeah, and some other similar equipment. So these are some of the most common personal equipment you guys are required to know. This is just like a broad classification, but then you need to keep in mind that if you don't decide to wear overalls, you can also choose to wear anything like well-fitting clothing, which is mainly made of a hard wearing material. And then you have to make sure that it's not very tight, but it's loose. So in case maybe you've forgotten your overalls. But then now let's use a standard system of classifying these PPEs based on the specific body part which they protect. So we have different kinds of PPEs depending on the part of your body which they are protecting. So number one, we can say we have PPEs which we wear for eye protection. This is now a standard system of classifying PPE. So first and foremost, you need to know why you're wearing eye protection PPE. So you need to know that eye protection can help you prevent from accidents, such as a situation whereby you have small particles or sharp objects or even liquids or things like gases or intense lights which are coming directly into your eyes. So for that case, in order for you to be able to protect your eyes, then it means you need to wear the correct PPEs which specifically protect your eyes. So some of the most common ones which you meet out there in the workshop includes things like safety glasses. Then number two, you can have safety goggles. So there's a difference between safety glasses and safety goggles. If you guys want to see some pictures, you can look them up online. And then thirdly, you have a face shield. Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen what a face shield looks like. That thing welders usually wear, covering their entire face to protect themselves from those splashes from welding rods. Yeah, and then lastly, you can even have a welding helmet. Oh yeah, my bad. The welding helmet is is the one. Okay, you can interchange the two, but in most cases, if you want to be much more specific, you can say the welding helmet. So like I've said, to have an idea of how these things look like, you can look up some pictures online. Yeah. So then you guys need to take note of this point. Might save your life as you are in the workshop. So in a scenario whereby you have some let's call it hazardous liquids, and then it enters your eyes. What are you supposed to do? So this must be washed out with clean water or eye wash. But of course, it's not always a must that you're going to be in a workshop where they have eye wash. So the best way is to look for where you can find some clean water. Then another classification of PPE which we can have is hand protection. So specifically to protect your hands. So you need to know that you can injure or harm your hands from various things, such as maybe cuts, or you can have skin damage, or even chemical burns. So these are some of the ways you can harm or injure your hands. So one of the most common PPEs you can wear is just gloves. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's something else which has been discovered, but yeah, gloves must be one if you want to protect your hands. So maybe you guys ought to know the type of gloves which are there. So maybe you can have a list. So some of the most common ones include latex gloves. I already told you that latex is a material, and yeah, it's more like a plastic. Then you can also have rubber gloves. Then sometimes you can have leather gloves, depending on the working conditions and specifically what you want to protect your hands from. So I think if maybe you want to protect your hands from chemicals, then latex gloves would be ideal. But then if you want maybe to prevent your hands from high temperatures or high heat, then maybe you might need to go for leather gloves. So for instance, if maybe you're a blacksmith or you work in metal smelting workshop, yeah, then leather gloves will do the job. So normally it depends on the working conditions and what you're trying to prevent to protect your eyes from, your hands from. And then another classification which we can have is ear and respiratory protection. Respiratory. Yeah, so again, you can highly damage your ears and your respiratory system if you work in a workshop and it's exposed to, for instance, an example is loud noises. You know, some workshop processes produce a lot of noise. Yeah, and these can damage ears. And then aside from that, yeah, I think this is one of the most basic ones. So now you need to know how you can protect your ears in a scenario where you work in a workshop which produces a lot of noise. So mostly we have ear defenders and ear plugs. Yeah, for those of you that have parents that work in the mines or they're from the copper belt, you may have seen what these look like, because usually a mine is an example of a workshop which produces a lot of noise. Yeah, so you find that the miners are usually given some earplugs. They just look like squishy beans or some marshmallows. I don't know, something like a marshmallow which you can put in your ears. But they're not really marshmallow, but it's a soft material which you can put in your ears. So if you want to see some pictures, you can look them up online. And now you also need to know why you need to wear PPEs to protect your respiratory system. So in most cases, you need to wear respiratory equipment during some difficult tasks where maybe you have difficulties in breathing, or you experience some headaches, dizziness, or sickness. So then that means you need to wear respiratory PPE. Yeah. So aside from that, you guys need to know what you need to wear to protect yourself from damaging your respiratory system. So some of the most common ones includes a dust mask and respiratories. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys know how face mask looks like, but then we have different kinds of face masks. So in this case, we're talking about a dust mask. This one specifically prevents dust from entering your nose, your trachea, and stuff like that. Yeah, so that was another classification. So now moving on, we can also look at another class of PPE, or not necessarily PPE, but maybe a caution for you guys which you need to know. So you can call it lifting and carrying. So this one basically it's looking at how you can protect injury from the spinal cord or your back. So there's a certain way in which you can prevent that, and this is what we are trying to look at in this particular section. Yeah, so maybe you guys need to take note of these points. So number one, which is that bulky objects must be lifted and carried correctly to what? To prevent injury. So this injury is particularly to the back, Yeah, so but then how can you lift bulky objects correctly? So number one, you need to ensure your feet are close to the object, but then at the same time need to keep your back straight. Keeping your back straight. Yeah. And then secondly, as you're lifting, in as much as you need to make sure, so I don't know if you guys can picture it in your mind, as you are lifting something, your feet are supposed to be very close to that object. So you can picture it, maybe you're trying to lift a TV or a fridge. So your feet are not supposed to be far away from the fridge. You need to make sure that your toes are almost touching the fridge as you're about to lift that fridge. Yeah, so this is what we mean when we say you need to keep your feet close, and then you need to ensure that your back is straight. Don't bend over or something like that when you're lifting. And then secondly, you need to keep objects as close to body as possible, yeah, when lifting. So then aside from that, you need to lift from leg muscles. Lift from leg muscles, yeah. And then again, ensure that your back is straight. Must be straight all the time. Yeah. And then aside from that, just make sure that you wear the correct PPE. So proper PPE must be worn. Yeah, so that was one of the most common broad classification of PPE and how you can use it. So now moving on away from PPE, you guys need to know what first aid is. So under first aid, first and foremost, it is very important for us to describe and understand what first aid is. So how I would describe first aid is by saying first aid is the initial help given to a person before he or she accesses definitive medical treatment. So this is how I would describe first aid. First aid is the initial help given to a person before he or she accesses definitive medical treatment. Of course, there are other definitions based on the specific text you are using. Google might describe it differently, but what's important is you highlight the main points in your definitions. Yeah. So now you guys need to know some of the most common aims of first aid, like why we have first aid in the first place. So this is a classical exam question, and there are three main points which you need to give out if you ask for the aims of first aid. So number one, you need to understand that one of the main aims of first aid is to preserve life. Then number two is to prevent illness or injury from worsening. Then number three is to promote recovery. If you can give these 3 points, then you are home and dry. To preserve life, prevent illness or injury from worsening, and to promote recovery. Yeah, so aside from that, you guys need to understand that in terms of first aid, you can either have a first aid station or a first aid representative. So when you talk about a first aid station, normally this may be someone trained in first aid, and maybe they just have a first aid box, and then in that first aid box maybe they have some minor injury relief and some basic things, eye wash. And then when you talk about first aid representative, so first aid representative, now this is when now it becomes a bit more professional. So for instance, if you have attended any marathon, because I've noticed that marathons have become very popular in Lusaka. There was the Absa Marathon, the Barclays Marathon. So on that final event, there's normally an ambulance, and maybe they set up a tent, and that ambulance is being run by qualified and trained medical personnel. Even in that tent, you find people that went and studied, I don't know, nursing. I'm not sure about the health industry, but all I'm saying is for first aid representatives, this one, it provides basic assistance. And then a first aid station, just something simple. You have a first aid box. Yeah, so for instance, maybe when you used to run back in secondary school, sure, I used to see some first aid stations, but it's somehow different from first aid representatives. So that was just a main takeaway point for you guys. Now, moving on, let's try to look at the importance of ventilation and lighting in a workshop. So let's just call this workshop ventilation and lighting. About this, yeah. So I'm sure you guys know what ventilation is. I'm sure you know what lighting is. So, but in a nutshell, ventilation is an act of providing is it air into an enclosed environment. So it can either be mechanical or natural ventilation. But basically, when you look at a door, a window, those air vents you have in the house, those are classical examples of ventilation in a house. So without that, you will find that the house becomes less conducive to stay in. Yeah, and you can even suffocate and die. So ventilation is very important. Yeah, so especially if you have an enclosed environment, it's important to provide proper ventilation. Yeah, so and then in terms of lighting, basically the addition or introduction of lighting to, again, an enclosed environment. So you've seen those bulbs, and at the same time, it can either be natural or mechanical. Yeah, so depending on the scenario, but we're not looking at what ventilation and lighting is. You guys just need to have an idea. But our main focus is why we need to provide proper workshop ventilation and lighting. So first and foremost, starting off, we need to know that workshop must be ventilated to what? To remove fumes. But in a workshop, it becomes even worse, because in a house, if you don't have proper ventilation, the only thing you risk is suffocating from not having enough air. Yeah, maybe that's the best correct thing to use. But in a workshop, aside from not having enough proper air, but then you have addition of other harmful and toxic fumes, like carbon dioxide and other related harmful gases. So this is why it's very much important. So in a workshop, you don't just need a window, you don't just need a door. Sometimes you might need some other forms of mechanical ventilation. You can have an air vent. Yeah, you can have air cones, stuff like that. And then, so you guys need to know that fans and exhaust attraction are used for this purpose. Yeah, and then lastly, well, good lighting is important to see it. Good lighting is essential. to what? To see. Wait. Yeah. So now I'm moving away from ventilation and lighting. Let's talk about fire exits and assembly points. Fire exits and assembly points. So I find that most of the workshops or any professional building, you find it normally has a fire exit and also an assembly point. In a scenario whereby a fire breaks out and things like that. So now basically we're looking at fire exits and assembly points with regards to mechanical workshops. So you guys need to know that in a scenario whereby there's a fire or fire is about to break out, you need to use designated fire exits to evacuate building at assembly points. Yeah, so like I have said, most professional workshops you meet there, they will normally have a sign telling you to say exit or yeah. So that's something you guys need to keep in mind. Then now moving on from that, let's try to look at what a fire notice is. Fire notice. So a fire notice is basically a piece of document which provides some proper information which you need to follow or use in a scenario whereby a fire breaks out. So it will tell you to say, maybe if you go down the hallway or you turn left, you find the fire extinguisher. Yeah, and things like that. Just some information which you need to minimize the effects of the fire and to save people's lives. If you guys want to see some pictures of how a fire notice looks like, you can look it up. But basically, that's what's found on a fire notice. So it basically provides information on how to deal with a fire, how to evacuate. Yeah. So aside from that, you guys need to know what a fire procedure is. Say fire procedure. Yeah. So a fire procedure again, in a scenario where a fire breaks out, just like a fire notice, so a fire procedure will also give you the specific procedures you need to follow to prevent the effects of a fire in a scenario whereby there's a fire in a building. Yeah, so basically that's it about fire notices and fire procedures. So they are quite similar documents, but you can look up on Google for some pictures on what a fire notice is and what fire procedures are. Now let's move on to hazardous materials. Hazardous. Yeah, so there are quite a number of hazardous materials in the workshop. You can have some harmful chemicals, some harmful gases and liquids and all that. So one thing you guys just need to keep in mind is you're supposed to take precautions when handling them. Yeah. So now, aside from that, maybe we can try to look at some of the typical hazardous materials you can find in a workshop. So, say typical hazardous materials. So number one, you can have fuel. Number two, you can have battery acid. And thirdly, you can have some cleaning chemicals. Just think of any harmful material which you can find in a workshop. So aside from that, you can have engine oil, then maybe you can also have engine coolant, some people call it antifreeze. Yeah. And then lastly, or maybe additionally, you can have brake, transmission, and power steering fluid. Yeah, then you can even have paints and thinners, because paints can contain some quite harmful chemicals. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys would be interested in knowing what these chemicals are, but basically fuel is well, the fuel you use to run your machines and devices in your home. So you can have petrol, diesel, yeah, or paraffin. Basically that's a fuel. And then battery acid, one of the most toxic chemicals you can find in a workshop. Well, is the acid they use in batteries. So I think one of the most common ones is it sulfuric? Yeah. So it's a very strong acid, and it's very corrosive and harmful to you. So you can even have some cleaning chemicals. Yeah, so there are different kinds of cleaning chemicals found out there. And then in a scenario where you work maybe in an auto mechanical workshop, you may be exposed to some engine oil. So engine oil, mostly it's a harmful material, but how harmful it can be is when you dispose of it wrongly. So this is the oil you find in most engines of vehicles. So yeah, you have different kinds of engine oils, and then you have engine coolant, yeah, to help cool your engine, yeah, your radiators and all that, also known as antifreeze. Then you have fluids for lubricating, such as brake fluid, transmission fluid, and power steering fluid. Yeah, so that's basically it. So now I would say the last thing we are supposed or required to look at is what material safety data sheets are, also known as MSDS. Now let's say material safety data sheets, aka MSDS. So again, this is a classical exam question which you might find. I ask you to define what an MSDS is, and some of the information it contains. So now, an MSDS, material safety data sheet, it provides information about hazardous hazardous products available in the workshop. Yeah, so some of the information you can find on an MSDS. So an MSDS basically is a document containing some of the products you have in the workshop, and yeah, and some of the information about it, like if it's toxic, how you can prevent the effects from worsening, how you can handle it, and all that. So if you guys want to see how an MSDS looks like, you can look it up. But what you're supposed to keep in mind is the fact that an MSDS contains information that may include yeah. So number one, what the product is. What the product is. Number two, the manufacturing details. Manufacturing details. Then number three, product ingredients. Then number four, physical description. Physical description. Then number five, potential health hazards. Then number six, it might contain things like conditions that could increase hazards. Then number seven, you might find things like how to safely handle it. How to safely handle it. So if a question comes to you in an exam, and then you're able to give out that, and it means you've scored quite a number of marks. And maybe we can even include these other points, such as what to do if you're exposed to it, what to do if exposed to it, and lastly, what to do in the event of a spill. What to do in the event of a spill. Yeah, so moving on from what MSDS is, let's look at the product warning. Product warning. So now when you look at product warning, mainly when you look at hazardous materials, or with regards to the packaging or the container, it will have a warning label. And I'm sure you've seen this. Let's say, for instance, when you look at maybe a container of acid or anything like that, they'll put some warning labels there, and then you're supposed to be able to interpret that warning label and know what it's about. Yeah, so that's basically what we're saying here. See, hazardous materials, container or packaging product warning label includes, yeah, so number one, to tell you what the product is, what the product is. Then number two, it will tell you the manufacturer details. Then number 3, to tell you the hazard type. Then number 4, it will tell you the potential health hazards. Potential health hazards. And then lastly, to tell you protection, how you can protect yourself from that specific products. So you guys need to keep in mind that warning symbols indicate the type of hazard associated with a material or chemical. So maybe you might just want to put it in writing. Say note, warning symbols indicate a type of hazard associated with the material or chemical. Yeah, so the warning symbols will basically indicate the type of hazard which is associated with a specific material or chemical. So now let's look at some of the symptoms which you can know to say, okay, this person has been exposed to a hazardous material. So if you see that, you need to react very quickly and maybe take that person to the hospital because they might die. So there are some symptoms. So let's just say hazardous material health symptoms. Because in most cases, when someone has been exposed to a hazardous material, they're going to show some symptoms. These are the ones we're going to indicate here. So number 1, you have breathing difficulties. That person will be having challenges breathing. Then number 2, you have irritation of the nose or throat or lungs. If you experience that, then yeah, RIP. Nah, just joking. Yeah, but that's some of the symptoms. Sometimes you can even have discomfort or headaches. So if you're in a workshop, you have a headache, there's no need to even going to the hospital. Just pick up the phone call your relatives and say bye-bye. Yeah, that was just a joke. Yeah, but those are some of the symptoms. So you can even have fatigue and some weakness. So these are symptoms you're not supposed to ignore when you're in a workshop, because it means you have been exposed to some hazardous material. So if you have fatigue or you feel weak while it's in the workshop, you need to react quickly. First off, if you feel dizziness while it's in the workshop, because that is not a normal feeling. And then number 6, if you appear to lose loss of consciousness, then automatically you have been exposed to a hazardous material. Then number 7, if you appear to have restricted movement. Then lastly, if you have someone and they appear to have poor or blurred vision, automatically they have been exposed to a hazardous material. Yeah, Zafire. Yeah, so these are some of the most common symptoms you expect to find there. So, but then the question is, what are you supposed to do if you experience such? And the answer is Jesus. Just joking. Yeah. So the answer is you need to seek medical attention immediately if you have any of the symptoms above. So you're not supposed to ignore the symptoms or claim to say no studying, yeah, or anything like that, because you might end up dying. So that's basically it about the symptoms which you are most likely to find. Yeah. So the last thing we said we're supposed to look at was pills, and we can conclude chapter 1 and maybe try to look at some questions. So now you guys need to know how to deal with spillages. Yeah, so in my time when I used to work at an auto mechanical workshop, this has been a very challenging problem on how to dispose of used engine oil. It's fine, some people might just spill it on the ground, but that is not how you're supposed to dispose of spillages. Yeah. So now let's just say spillages can result from fuel leaks, oil leaks, damaged or even dropped containers, etc. Yeah. So now how are you supposed to handle spillages? So you're supposed to clean up immediately and do not let into drain. Do not let into drain. Yeah, so basically that's how you're supposed to dispose of or deal with spillages. So now let's look at how you can dispose of workshop waste. Disposal of workshop waste. So it's very important that you don't just contaminate the environment. So like I said earlier, workshop waste can result from used engine oils, coolant, fluids, used oil, filters, even rags, and used cleaning chemicals. Used cleaning chemicals. All these can be examples of workshop waste. So now how you can dispose of workshop waste is by doing the following. So you need to properly store in a sealed and labeled container. Yeah, so an example is if you find an auto mechanical workshop and you're the only educated person who has learned about workshop technology and workshop safety, then you find that what they do once they service a vehicle, they just spill the oil on the ground, or maybe they throw it in the drainage. You're supposed to educate them to say, no, let's buy a drum, and then once we service a vehicle, once we obtain some used oil, we'll be spilling the used oil in here. And then there's normally companies which come to collect that, and maybe they can even give you some money for you selling them that. So that's a very good workshop practice which you guys can try to practice. And that way you help protect the environment. So you guys need to note that there's some waste which can be recycled. So a very good example is engine oil. I think it can be recycled. So now in summary, as we end the lecture or the class, so for chapter 1, you guys need to know that we have looked at what safety clothing is. Then we have also looked at some workshop safety hazards. Then we have also looked at safety data sheets and labels. Then we have also looked at storage and spills for this particular class. So from now on, you should be able to answer any question pertaining to chapter 1, because that is all that there is to chapter 1. So in the next few series of videos, we're going to look at past exam questions specifically on chapter 1. So we'll try and do about at most 10 questions from past exam questions. And then ending the video, let's end it with something which you guys may already be aware of. So you must be aware of some safety rules for students in the workshop. Student in the workshop. So number 1, you guys need to always wear protective clothing. Number 2, you need to wear a hard leather shoes. Wear hard leather shoes. Number 3, you need to roll up sleeves. Roll up sleeves and take off your tie. Then number 4, you need to tie up long hair. Then number 5, you need to use suitable tools. Or machines for your work. And then number 6, you need to enter the workshop only with the demonstrator's permission. Then do not use any tools or machines without the permission of the demonstrator. Do not use any tools or machine without the permission of the demonstrator. Yeah, so actually there are quite a number of workshop safety rules, but let's see if we can go up to 10. So yeah, so number 8, never work alone in the workshop. Never work alone in the workshop. Then number 9, so when carrying tools, point the sharp edge downwards. When carrying tools, point the sharp edge downwards. Then the last